Hello, my lovely rose garden. My name is Avalon Roselin, indie author, and your ever so helpful and very normal camp counselor for the evening. Before I begin discussing Camp Damascus, I must first take a moment to talk about its author, Chuck Tingle. Most people on the internet know Dr. Tingle for his outlandish erotica, featuring all manner of queer pairings between humans and sentient dinosaurs, sentient concepts, Bigfoot, etc. He gained quite the cult following based on these titles, and I do mean these titles. I don't think anyone will soon forget the legendary "Pounded in the butt by my book, pounded in the butt by my book, pounded in the butt by my own butt." And no, that was not an audio error. That is the name of one of Dr. Tingle's erotica novels, also called Tinglers. He is also responsible for the Beauty and Grace that is Harriet Porber and the bad boy Parasaurolophus, following a certain famous author's descent into the conservative hellhole of the trans-exclusionary movement. Suffice to say, if this is all you knew about Chuck Tingle, you may be surprised, nay skeptical, about his ability to pen a serious horror novel, and as a debut novel at that. Most of his works are short stories and novellas that clock in at far below 10,000 words, and while Camp Damascus is not a long book, it is significantly larger than most of Dr. Tingle's other writings. And to those scoundrels I say, you don't know Chuck. There is a tendency among people to view anything weird, especially involving erotica, as inherently parody, and certainly Chuck has dabbled in parody throughout his prolific career as an erotic author. But one does not preclude the other. Just because someone writes primarily tongue-in-cheek erotica does not mean that it is any less a work of art, or that the artist is incapable of stepping outside that genre. Having read a few Tinglers myself, I can say that they are not especially for me, but they do have artistic merit and a singular, engaging writing style. The fact that they may or may not be about a man falling in love with his sentient billionaire jet plane or T-Rex CEO is notwithstanding. And further, I would argue that Tingle's weirdness is proof of his love for his craft. Tinglers, even those that parody a bigot's hatred back at her by making the main character a trans girl of a similar name, are sincere pieces of fiction. So I was not the least bit surprised to find that Camp Damascus, utilizing Dr. Tingle's unique and embracing perspective, was much more my speed than the other works I have read by him. I was actually a little surprised to find not a single sex scene in the entire book, but well, there's good reason for that, which we will get into shortly, now that you understand that neither this book, nor any Tingler, nor Dr. Tingle himself are meant to be sarcastic or a bit. All are genuine self-expression and artistry, however you feel about it. Now, what is Camp Damascus about? Rose, a devout Christian teenager living in Neverton, Montana, begins experiencing strange occurrences almost immediately after the book starts. First, while visiting a popular diving spot with her classmates, she sees a strange girl in the distance who appears to be watching her. Then, later that day at dinner, she vomits up dozens of mayflies. Things do not get gentler from there as she again sees the mysterious girl at a party just before her crush's neck gets snapped. Strangest of all is her parents' and her therapist's refusal to acknowledge that any of this is the least bit unordinary, and try to force Rose to deny her own experience, something which is very common in their particular sect of Christianity. There is a lot of gaslighting in this book. If that description did not make it clear enough, this is a book about gay conversion therapy. Camp Damascus is a conversion camp with a 100% success rate that the town of Neverton has essentially built its economy around, as the services rendered by the church do not come cheap, and discovering the secrets behind what those services exactly are, and why no one who goes to the camp ever talks about it, drives Rose to follow her natural curiosity and untangle a web of lies, conspiracy, and bigotry that festers at the heart of the church. Camp Damascus combines scathing critiques of capitalism, homophobia, and religious zealotry into one tidy parcel that packs a punch in every page. I felt deeply for all of the protagonist side characters, but especially for Rose, a girl who legitimately loves her parents and her community, and is then horrified to realize what they and she have been a part of. To know the lengths some parents are willing to go in order to preserve their ideals of a perfect family, or, as she puts it at one point, to know that the love of her parents does have conditions, and she can't meet them. There are a great deal of twists in this tale, but before I go into the spoiler spiel, I'd like to state very directly that this book deals heavily in religious trauma and homophobia, both internal and external. If these are topics that you are not ready to explore, you'll want to hold off on reading Camp Damascus until you are. Seriously, it is not allegorical or a thinly veiled commentary on these things. It is very forward about these themes. If you are leaving the video now, please remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. I make videos about the books I read and the books I write, and your support really makes a difference for an indie author like me. If you're interested in supporting me even further, please consider buying my books or becoming a patron. You can find the links to my website, Patreon, Ko-fi, and social media accounts in the description. Now let's get right into the demonic possession. The unraveling of these secrets kicks into high gear when Rose meets up with another girl named Willow, one who feels distinctly familiar, who tells her that she needs to stay away. Shortly after, Rose is attacked by another demon and manages to kill it, or at least incapacitate it. Rose then teams up with Willow and Saul, who apparently also went to Camp Damascus, to unravel the secret of what is really going on there. This is one of my few criticisms of the book. Willow never really felt like a full character to me, especially one that was supposedly Rose's love interest prior to the events of the book. The pacing of the book does go pretty fast at some points, and I can see why there wasn't really time to explore this, but it is a little strange for Dr. Chuck Love is Real Tingle to focus so little on the romantic relationship between the lead and her girlfriend. Also, the pacing here kind of drags a little bit. I was very into the beginning of the book, and there's some fun B-movie style horror near the end, but a lot of the middle part is just kind of there. Things happen, sometimes a little too conveniently, to get the heroes where they need to be. Anyway, on to the reveal. The way that Camp Damascus accomplishes its conversion therapy is through binding a demonic being to the unfortunate host that will assault them or their loved ones anytime they experience same-sex attraction. This also comes with the side effect of the host vomiting up some kind of demonic mayfly that becomes agitated in the presence of the demons. Also, the demons wear what I can only picture as Target employee uniforms, red shirts and khakis, because they are only unwilling employees of the Christo-capitalist machine that is Camp Damascus. Another side effect of exposure to the bugs is memory loss, which is why Rose, and most other success stories from Camp Damascus, don't remember ever going there. Rose, Saul, and Willow burn this place to the ground. The therapist in charge of everything is attacked by bugs to death, and the demons are released from their bonds, contracts, whatever you want to call them, so they can hunt down and destroy their captors, the counselors. Will they go home after that? Will they continue to kill people? I don't know. It's not really the point. The point is that the camp can't enforce conversion therapy on any more queer teens, and the villains got their comeuppance in the end. I really do think that your enjoyment of this book is probably going to hinge on how closely you can relate to the dissonance between being religious and queer, and how those two things are often set at odds in Western society. There are examples of religious gay people in this book, namely Saul, and Rose herself is unable to completely disconnect from the church despite her disgust with its actions. Once she realizes what's been done to her, or that something happened at least, she starts making up her own Bible quotes, like Rose 2:6, to create a new scripture for herself. Camp Damascus is interesting for sure, but like I said, if you can't relate to Rose's situation, it may not pack the same punch that it did for me and many others. Christianity in general is so enforced in the West, and evangelism in particular in parts of the United States, that I don't think anyone from these areas will be missing any context required to read Camp Damascus. What I am saying is that you will probably have a different experience reading this book if you have never, for example, had something go wrong in your life and immediately thought, what did I do to make God angry at me? My family was never particularly conservative or even super devout by most standards. I think we went to church for a sum total of 2 years worth of Sundays when I was a kid. But despite not being raised in a strict religious environment, and even though I am no longer Christian, I still occasionally have that thought of, I must have done something wrong to make God mad. And it is those kinds of thoughts and that kind of experience that is being targeted in Camp Damascus. Religious trauma is almost inescapable in our current society, and this book is in many ways both the burn and the balm of queer religious trauma. But what do you think? Leave me your favorite insect emoji in the comments, and tell me if you've read Camp Damascus or any of Dr. Tingle's other books. And thank you for sticking around to the end of the review. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or in the description below, please consider joining my Patreon. Your support means so much to me and allows me to continue making content. If you want to support my content in different ways, consider buying my books, donating on Ko-fi, subscribing to the channel, or even just giving this video a like and comment. Any and everything is appreciated so much. Keep growing till next time, Rose Garden!